there. So today we're going to talk about Newsela, and we're going to talk about what I'm going to call a Newsela remix, because we've been using Newsela as a basic reading tool for a couple years now, and I know we've been using it at varying levels of success and varying levels of sort of integration in our content, and not just something that's a standalone um, article that we're doing. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about writing and literacy infusion and how we can use Newsela to really sort of fuse those practices together in your content, no matter if you're ELA, if you're science, social studies, or even a specialty area like the arts. So I know most of you all know me. I am Becky Wilson. I'm your coach here. I'm the coach here at AL Standback. I also work with Partnership High School, and I work with New Hope Elementary School. So since I am kind of split, the easiest way to reach me on any given day is going to be my email. If you email me here, I get back to you as soon as I can. But if you have a more specific request, I do have a coaching request form. So if you know that you want to co-teach with me or co-plan with me, absolutely use that form, and I will get back to you as soon as possible, because I love to have those opportunities to really work with you one-on-one to help our students just grow even more. So our objectives for this session are a few things. We're going to understand the connection between writing instruction and Newsela, and how we use this reading tool to sort of drive writing for our students. We're also going to be able to find an article and create an assignment and produce something that you can use for your class next week or next month in the unit that you're doing, something that's really going to be useful for you. We're also going to talk through intentional vocabulary instruction and some best practices around vocabulary instruction to increase literacy throughout the content areas. And we're going to finally develop a writing prompt that aligns with your writing focus area and the content for your course. So we're going to get into how you can sort of think through that as well. So you guys know that school-wide literacy focus is a big deal here. We are going to be working through this throughout the year, but thinking about literacy is sort of one of those big issues, and it's how do we get to improve literacy outcomes for our students, besides just saying they need to read more. Well, reading is not the only lens through which literacy is important. We also have to think about the communication strategies that are employed through writing. Students who can write well are students who are stronger readers. So we need to use that read-write link in order to think about how do we drive that critical thinking for our students, and how do we make literacy at the forefront of our classes, no matter what subject area we're teaching. So I'm not going to delve into the writing progression here, but this is linked. I know you have a link to these slides, so you're able to click on this, but this is the AL Standback writing progression, and it does talk about where we are. I know with 8th grade, we're currently going to be talking through, we'll start with 6th grade. With 6th grade, we're looking to get to rap and really writing strong sentences this year, and I know we've talked about the non-negotiables, and we're moving on to that sentence expansion and that stretch your sentence with who, what, when, where, why, and somehow, and that's really where we're headed next. With 7th grade, we've done the non-negotiables, and I know you guys have already kind of reached a little bit ahead, and I know you're thinking you're going to go back and do some more elaboration and pull in that stretching sentences, since they didn't get it as much in 6th grade last year. So we've got some great ways that we can use Newsela to help us do that. And then in 8th grade, I know you've done the sentence non-negotiables, and you're moving on to the and, but, so, and really stretching your students in the depth that they're writing. So why are we talking about Newsela? So I know we've talked a lot about writing, and asking students to write is really a high cognitive demand for them. So giving them a text off of which they can springboard in order to create their writing is something that is very beneficial for our students, and for pretty much anyone when they're trying to start entering into this world of writing. So why Newsela? Newsela is a continued literacy tool for our school, and there's a few reasons why. I'll get into those in just a minute, but I also want to think about the fact that our students should be reading 6 to 8 articles a month. I know most of you are using this once a week in your classes, and it says once a month, but most of you are using it once a week in order to supplement and build out stronger literacy practices. So one reason that I like Newsela is because it is very diverse. It has articles that are published like today. They're straight off the presses from places like National Geographic, the Smithsonian, New York Times. It's going to be articles that are relevant to what's happening in our world for our kids. So they're things our kids are likely to connect with. The other reason I like Newsela is because there are multiple collections available. So if you teach ELA, social studies, or science, we have a whole collection of resources that are available to you that you can delve into. And a lot of them are aligned to some of the standards for science, social studies, or English language arts. But this other collection that we have for this year is this social emotional learning. And we have spent a lot of time as a school really focusing on these social emotional practices with our students. It's great to have this collection that when we need to hone a skill with students, when we see something that's maybe falling off with our students aren't doing the practices that we would really like to see them, we can pull out one of these articles and in order to enable a conversation and to really create a dynamic assignment that's going to give students a place to show what they know and to connect back to those social emotional cues we've been teaching them. A huge reason why I'm a fan of Newsela is this just right reading level. We know our students are at a variety of levels. We have some students who are reading well beyond 8th grade in middle school, and we have some students who are struggling with elementary school text. And it's okay that they are where they are. But it's very difficult for us as educators to always find something that can meet them where they are and also convey what we're trying to teach. Newsela does that for us by offering the text at a variety of levels, somewhere in elementary school, usually to what would be published in either the magazine or the newspaper that it normally would come from. That max level is going to be something that, we as adults would be reading. And so it's something that some of our students that need a more dense text, something to start to make meaning from this rich text, they can have access to. But it also doesn't hold our students who are struggling with some literacy skills to reading a different text that's really intended for elementary school. Instead, it's the same text, but written at a more accessible level for them. So this is really important to be able to allow children to all participate in the same conversation around the same sorts of topics we're trying to teach. As an educator, I also like that there are varied activities built in that require low levels of prep. So here you're going to see it says ELA. ELA is going to be the base. So power words. Power words are not just an ELA skill. Vocabulary doesn't live just in language arts. So power words are something you can access no matter what content you're in because you're helping our students build out their vocabulary and helping them become stronger readers and writers. The writing prompt is fully customizable, so you can click on it and customize the writing prompt as we've gone through in our previous trainings, and you can change it up for whatever your class is talking about. The quiz is how we're going to get that constant adjustment for their right there reading level, so it's important that they do those 4 questions, but it's also important that the learning doesn't stop with those 4 questions. That is not the be-all, end-all of Newsela. Really, the real meat of it comes in that writing prompt, and then in this one with the thumbtack where it's called Lesson Sparks. Lesson Sparks are fantastic because they're enrichment or extension activities that really ask you to put the article at the center of learning and to build around it. And these Lesson Sparks are sort of created for you so that you don't have to generate this big idea and come up with all the ideas. Instead, you can read through, do a little bit of the prep on the front end, and have a great dynamic lesson ready for your students. So for instance, here we have Lesson Sparks that are laying under the ELA subject, but we also have Lesson Sparks that are under both the elementary and the middle school social emotional learning catalogs. So if I were teaching 6th grade, I might check out both the middle school and the elementary school to see which one I think fits my students best. Or if I'm teaching 7th or 8th grade, I'm probably more likely to lead toward the middle school, but you might check out the elementary just to see how it differs from the middle school version. So that was a lot, right? We're talking a little bit about why we're using Newsela. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to do this training today was so that we could reflect on the fact that it's more than they just read an article and take a quiz. Reading the article and taking the quiz is the start of their journey with a Newsela article. But the assignment needs to have more than just student completion. It's not about rote compliance with reading an article, and answering 4 questions. How can you make this learning the centerpiece for your lesson and drive students to think critically and offer you their feedback? So, is this a centerpiece of your lesson, or is this just an assignment? Is this something that you're using to maybe generate seminar or discussion? Is this something that you are really customizing the writing prompt so that it fits what you want to talk about with your students? Are you looking at the instructions and making them relevant to the students who are sitting before you? And then what feedback can you give students on that analysis that comes from the writing? So this is where we talk a little bit about being very intentional with Newsela. So like any tech tool, there's a whole lot of ways it can be implemented. So one of the things about Newsela is that we can really set our students up for success by doing some before, some during, and some after work that allows them to really build more meaning from the text. If you want to talk about how to do some of this work with students as they're reflecting afterwards, here's some sources that you can use to go back to that. But what I'm going to focus on today is a little bit more of these instructional strategies that we're going to have with students. So the first that we're going to talk about is really designing an engaging assignment. So this is about finding an article that really has to do with what you're teaching in your class. And so this is where I want you to think about what are you going to be doing that is going to be relevant for students. I want you to think of instructional strategies you're going to use before, during, and after. So we're going to talk about some of these before strategies. So the before strategies are things like graphic organizers that we can give students, or pre-assessments. These are things like introducing the vocabulary so that the students have a basis for entering the article, not just giving them the article cold and saying, read this. I used to love doing a hook with my students. That would usually be like a short video, maybe like a 5-minute YouTube video that I found on the topic. I remember one around plastic in the oceans, and I found some articles about it. And I found, not articles, I'm sorry. I found a video about it that was about a student that had generated an idea with how they were going to clean the plastics out of the ocean. Well, then the students are like, well, why is he coming up with this idea? Well, then we start reading articles about all of the issues with plastics in the ocean and what it does to the ecosystem, and how, all of the wildlife is affected, how the reefs are affected, how we as consumers of the things in the ocean are affected. It really built more of a buy-in for my students, and they were willing to read that article with a little bit more of a critical eye because I gave them a reason why it might be meaningful. I also helped through that video to build some background knowledge for some of my students who had no idea about what things, what things were lurking out there in terms of plastic in the oceans. They didn't have any real concept of what this issue was. So giving them that little bit of background made them want to delve a little bit deeper. So when we build in those pre-reading strategies, it is an attention getter. It's a hook. It gives the students something to really think about. Now, during the reading, I want us to think about things like what are the students actually doing? Are you giving them a graphic organizer to complete? Are you having them do finding unknown words? Are you having them highlight things in the text? There's a great set of annotation tools that we've reviewed in Newsela, and I'd be glad to work with you on. Do you want to do a coaching session? I'd be glad to work with you on building out those tools as strategies for your students to really be engaged with the text as they're moving through it. And then finally, we talk about the after strategies. What are our students doing afterwards? And these are the things I sort of brought up before. Are we having a seminar? Are we having a big discussion? Are we writing about what we've learned? Are we going to Padlet? Are we doing some think, pair, shares? How are we looking at what our students have gained from this article and evaluating it? Is it something that we are really seeing what they're learning, or are we just seeing, did they do it or did they not do it? And if we're doing that, what is the value of that? So if you're having some issues with quizzes and students maybe not taking them seriously, there is a reflection template for you here. So this is, after going back, why do I want to, or how would I change my answers now? So if I've got these wrong, I'm going to fill these in for the 2 that I got wrong. And I'm going to look at, what did I see once I went back? what's the reason I got that question wrong? And then how in the future when I'm reading would I go about trying to fix this issue? Okay, so we've talked a little bit about setting up the before, during, and after. Now I want to talk a little bit about intentional vocabulary. So if you're choosing an article that's specific to your content area, are you using those articles to highlight that domain specific vocabulary? Are you helping students inference and struggle with making that meaning for the words that are difficult for them? Are you doing more than just what does the word mean? If you haven't used the Frayer models before, so this is a great tool if you want to talk about building vocabulary as a concept that the students are going to maintain. So a Frayer model is going to ask them more than just what is it. So yes, it's the word and what does it mean, but what else? What is a fact about this? What's something that it relates to in the content we're talking about? What are some examples of it? So what are some ways that it looks when I see it in context? And what are some things that are non-examples? How do I know what is not this word? What is something else entirely? I like this with my students because it helps them sort of take that into their working knowledge and be able to have it as part of their vocabulary instead of just a list that they've now made in their notebook. Some tech tools like quizzes, Kahoot, and Gimkit are great for reviewing that vocabulary. So if you've generated some vocabulary from those Newsela articles, it's great to be able to pull those tools in to help evaluate that. If you want to know a little bit more about why vocabulary is so important, this is one of those infographics that I absolutely love. It talks a lot about why vocabulary really helps students, and things like visual displays of vocabulary is great. Having kids be able to paraphrase or put words into their own words. Front loading that vocabulary, especially for our students who are emergent bilinguals who may have never heard these words before, it's super, super important. But these are some great things to think about when you're teaching explicit vocabulary. If you're looking to dive deeper into class discussion, I want to give you a couple of resources here that you can use to start digging into that. I know this is just a little short session for today, so I don't want to overwhelm you, but these are some great resources for diving into class discussion. I love Coda Pedagogy's website. It's something I like to use myself, but something I really enjoyed, I've always enjoyed as a teacher, is doing seminars with students. And to that end, you'll see my little shout out here that if you want to ask me to help you facilitate a seminar because you're not totally comfortable, or just because it's hard sometimes as a teacher with one person to facilitate, absolutely ask me. I would be glad to spend the day with you doing a seminar with you and your students. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about writing. We've talked a little bit about Newsela. So how are we going to be supporting writing in every content area? So we've already worked through our non-negotiables. We've worked through what are the types of sentences, and now we're waiting to spin that question and restate. So this is where it comes in that you need to really start thinking about creating a writing prompt for your students. So what we're going to be doing today is when I finish here, we're going to go all of us into Newsela, and we're going to find an article that fits the content we're teaching. We're going to think through how does this relate to my curriculum and when can I use this? We're going to come up with a before reading activity that's going to help activate knowledge for students. It might be a video, it might be front loading vocabulary, it might be some other kind of hook that you've come up with. Maybe for science, you're going to do an experiment or a demonstration for the students to get them interested in what we're talking about. Then we're going to plan our during reading activity. Are we going to highlight and annotate? Are we going to fill out a graphic organizer? Are we going to be doing stickies with unknown words? What is our during reading activity that's going to help students be purposeful and build meaning into what they're doing? And then we're going to do our after reading activity. And this is how we check for understanding. We're going to make sure how this relates to our curriculum. For the after reading activity, I want you to come up with a way to incorporate your writing. So right now we're working on really building complete sentences that show some elaboration. So asking students to answer the question that's related to your content area, but really asking them to use information from the text to build a full sentence that has some detail in it. So you can see that is your assignment for today, your before, during, and after. You can submit your plan on this Newsela Padlet. And I would love for you to peruse each other's ideas. I'd love for you to share some comments or ideas. If you're using a similar article, maybe think through how you could, things that have, if you've used the article before, talk through some things that have been successes or maybe some limitations that you found as you're doing it. But I'd really like you to share your ideas here and to see what we can generate as a learning community. All right, so I know we've done a lot of Newsela in the past, and I don't want to overwhelm you with the basics, but I know some of you might now be saying, ooh, I don't remember how to do that skill check, or ooh, I'm not sure about those SEL and Newsela. There's some PD here, but I also want you to remember that you can absolutely ask me to do a deep dive into Newsela with you, and I would absolutely love to. I'm going to be working through some articles with students this year, and I would love to walk side by side with you and to really delve into this. So absolutely, do not hesitate to reach out to me either through the coaching request form here or here at my email. Either one is absolutely fine, but I would love to get you guys interested in your interest in this, and I would love to be able to help you out with it. All right, so now I want you to get into the work of what we're doing. So I'm going to work around here with you, but I can't wait to see what you have and what you put on the Padlet. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in.